Hello and welcome to the Imprint Weekly Podcast, Summer Rewind Edition. We will be running back some of the many great guest interviews from our Imprint Weekly Podcast archive all the way up through Labor Day. I'm John Kelly, Senior Editor of The Imprint, a daily news site covering child welfare and youth justice around the country. You can read all of our coverage at imprintnews.org or check us out on Facebook or Twitter at the Imprint News. You can also sign up on our homepage for our free weekly and monthly newsletters. And for professionals in child welfare and youth justice, subscribe to our Youth Services Insider section for a closer look at news on business policy and practice. The Imprint Weekly Podcast is also a member of the Safe Camp Audio Network. You can check out our show page and all of Safe Camp's other great podcasts at safecampaudio.org on the web or at safecampaudio on all social media. For week 2 of the Summer Rewind, you are getting a twofer because I thought these two interviews paired pretty nicely together in a, shot chaser sort of way. The first interview is from episode 70 of the Imprint Weekly Podcast, and it is with Amy Dworsky of Chapin and Judy Havlicek of the University of Illinois, along with then community college student Matt Schaad. And the topic was why community college was not working out for so many foster youth who arrived on those campuses. Dworsky and Havlicek had just completed some research on this topic that found some very brutal numbers around community college completion. And Matt joined us to offer his perspective as a former foster youth who really had to navigate higher education by himself at first. Okay, so that's first, and then we're going to travel back in time a bit to episode 18 of the Imprint Weekly Podcast and our interview with Christopher Scott, who is the executive director of Sun Scholars in Connecticut, and Lino Peña-Martinez, who serves as president of the board for Sun Scholars. Some states have support programs for foster youth at college that are specific to a school. A lot of California schools have this, called Guardian Scholars. Sun Scholars is sort of a different take. It's a centralized program that supports current and former foster youth on college campuses around the state of Connecticut. And obviously, Connecticut is the advantage. It's not the biggest state, so I wouldn't say it's easy to pull off what they do in every state. Now, as you'll hear in that first interview, there's some solid evidence from the research that communication and during school support, meaning improving either of them, might make the difference between a lot of foster youth finishing community college and going on to either a 4-year college or a career, or bombing out of there. So it felt like a good fit to then feature some former foster youth who also experienced those shortcomings themselves during their college pursuit and did something about it for young people in Connecticut. So without further ado, enjoy this 2-part Summer Rewind, first featuring Amy Dworsky, Judy Havlicek, and Matt Schaad, and then our interview with Christopher Scott and Lino Peña-Martinez. Enjoy. Previous research on youth who aged out of foster care has shown that a troublingly small percentage complete a 4-year college degree. One of the most frequent statistics you'll hear used in conversations about foster care is that of those who age out into adulthood, less than 3% will complete a 4-year college degree. But less discussed is the higher education option most frequently used by youth who have experienced foster care, and that is community colleges, which primarily offer 2-year degrees and are positioned as a school where students can get the remedial help they need to catch up to college coursework, or they can begin higher ed in a low-cost setting that might help them reach later for a 4-year degree somewhere else. A recent research brief was published on the nexus between older foster youth and community college, and the findings are frankly pretty alarming. To discuss this, we are joined today by 3 guests. We have Amy Dworsky of Chapin, Judy Havlicek of the University of Illinois School of Social Work. They both led the way on this new research. And we have Matt Schaad, a 20-year-old student who experienced foster care as a youth and is now nearing completion of a 2-year degree from a community college. So guys, thank you all for joining me for this discussion. We start every podcast interview the same here at the Imprint Weekly Podcast. I just need each one of you to give me one of the following favorites: your favorite TV show or movie, musical group, book, or sports team. I'll pick the order so we avoid chaos. So Amy, you're first. What do you got?
I'm literally drawing a blank. Let me tell you my favorite TV show when I was a child.
Do it. That'll work.
Okay, that's easy. That was Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie. Amy dating herself a bit. I'm in that generation as well. No judgment there. Matt, what do you got?
My favorite TV show is Suits.
Suits. Lawyer show. Got it. Judy, favorite TV show, movie, sports team, book, or musical group?
I'm going to go with musical group, and I'm going to say Bob Dylan.
All right. Okay. There you have it. All right. Let's get into this new study a bit, which has both a quantitative and qualitative component to it. So, Amy, can you talk a bit about why you guys decided to take this one on and how exactly you built the research here?
So this was something Judy and I had been talking about a long time, was doing some sort of research looking at post-secondary education, particularly in Illinois. Both of us have been studying young people transitioning out of foster care for several years. And we know from a number of previous studies that we've been involved in that young people in foster care have much lower rates of post-secondary educational attainment than their peers. And in particular in Illinois, we know that, the state was sort of on one of the pioneers in extending foster care to age 21, but has kind of lagged behind in terms of its efforts regarding post-secondary education. So we wanted to take a closer look at what was happening here in Illinois, and we decided to focus specifically on community colleges because that's where the vast majority of young people in foster care are enrolling when they choose to pursue higher education.
Okay, so you kind of knew that going in. That was not a discovery. You kind of knew
Right.
that as a basis point. Okay.
Right.
All right, cool. So I'm going to ask Judy a little bit about what the findings were. But before we get to that, give us some of the numerator or denominator here. How many youth were identified in the data? And then, give us that big picture before Judy talks about the rest.
So in terms of the quantitative component, we had a really large sample. So what we did was we used administrative data from the State Child Welfare Agency to identify all of the young people who turned 17 while in foster care between 2012 and 2018. There was about 5,500 of those young people. And so we sent their records to the National Student Clearinghouse, which is a nonprofit organization that tracks college enrollment and graduation from the vast majority of colleges and universities in the United States. They matched their data to the DCFS administrative data and sent those records back to us, which allowed us to look at enrollment and graduation rates among that sample of about 5,500 young people. And then on the qualitative side, we conducted interviews with 24 students from community colleges who either were in foster care or who had been in foster care, as well as administrators, 5 community college administrators from across the state to get their perspective as well.
All right. So we have more than 5,000 youth identified through administrative data records, and you're kind of mashing that up with national, information about who has done what at college to kind of see, okay, how did it turn out for these young people?
Well, the findings, in some sense, they were not surprising. So we saw that about 35 or 36% of the young people in our sample of 5,500 had some post-secondary education. The vast majority of those, I think 85 or 86%, were community college students. So not surprising based on what prior studies had found.
Gotcha.
More troubling was that only 8% of those young people who went to community college earned either an AA degree or a certificate, some sort of, career or technical certificate. So very low completion rate. So that's the real concerning part of our findings from the quantitative research.
Okay. Judy, do you want to go a little bit further into that? So that was certainly a top line finding here, is that you had this of the youth who did go enroll in college, the majority went to community college, and of that group, 8% completed and received a degree at that point. So Judy, but there's much more to it. So what else did you guys find?
In the phone interviews that we completed with young people, some of the major findings from those interviews suggest that high school is a very stressful time for most of the participants that we interviewed. It's a time in which they kind of describe falling off track educationally, socially, relationally, and all domains of their life. They just had a really difficult time. And those experiences just made them unprepared or underprepared for college. That was one major finding that we didn't set out to ask questions about high school, but all of the young people started there and really sort of shared these very troubling narratives. And then the other major finding was that the transition to college was mostly navigated alone. And so they didn't receive hardly any support as far as they were concerned from either high schools or a social worker in the child welfare system, an independent living program. They were really navigating everything having to do with community college by themselves. And most of them came from families that had never gone to college. So this was really a brand new experience for them that was pretty stressful navigating. I'd say the last piece, well, part of that is financial aid. So many of them got into quite a bit of trouble because they weren't quite sure about the eligibility requirements to maintain their financial aid. That's part of that. And then I would say from the community college stakeholders, what they told us is that they are very interested in this group. They want to be helpful to young people, but they don't always know how to identify foster youth on college campuses. Young people who are at college aren't necessarily likely to self-identify. And then they also weren't very aware of the DCFS programs that support funding or cover the costs of college either. So those are the major findings from the qualitative piece.
Okay, so I want to bring Matt in at this point, because if you kind of think of that administrative data and those thousands of kids as the haystack, Matt, you're a needle. You were one of those young people who turned 17 in foster care, and you did go on to community college. And spoiler alert, Matt's doing good. He's about to finish, right? You got about what do you got? Like one semester left?
Yeah, this May I'll graduate with an associate's in science.
Congratulations. So I want you to think back to your time as an older teen in foster care during high school, and just, if you could, share with us a little bit about how you were thinking about college at that time and who you talked to about it.
So when I first originally decided in high school, it was probably about my junior year, I was passionate about baking. So I was going to go for baking and pastry. So I applied to Lincoln Land in Springfield, Illinois, and I got accepted. That process wasn't really hard. I had my caseworker at the time to help me, but the funding wasn't there. So a quarter of the way into the first semester, I ended up dropping out. But I did go back to getting my associate's in science like 6 months later due to my best friend. Her and her husband helped me with the process of applying again. And then by that time, I was looking at the DCFS resources. I ended up switching caseworkers and really wasn't told anything about the college process. The DCFS caseworkers seemed to lack the knowledge there to help.
Matt, can you discuss any specific support you did get, like ranging from just like mentorship or advising, like all the way to college grants or tuition waivers? Sounds like the caseworkers didn't really know enough to help you with that, but did anybody?
My best friend and her husband walked me through the FAFSA paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was looking online at scholarships. And when I first, like the first semester or two, like FAFSA covered everything. By then I was getting offers for scholarships, and I just applied for them, and basically they were handed to me.
Well, that's good. But I'm curious, for instance, did anybody at any point along the way tell you that there is a federal college tuition grant available to you as a older foster youth going to college? Did that ever come up from anybody?
No, never.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Christy Rennick, and I'm co-executive director of Fostering Media Connections. If you're enjoying the Imprint Weekly Podcast, please consider supporting it and all the other great work our team is doing. Every day, Fostering Media Connections is reporting on important child welfare and youth justice news through the Imprint, our daily news site. We're reaching foster and kinship caregivers directly in their homes with our award-winning magazine, Fostering Families Today. We help youth with lived experience share their stories and views through our Youth Voices Rising program. And we recently launched Safe Camp Audio, a podcast network featuring a wide range of shows on youth, families, justice, and the social safety net. To support our work and the amazing people who do it, please visit fosteringmediaconnections.org/donate. That's fosteringmediaconnections.org/donate. Thank you.
Amy and Judy, I want to hear your kind of main conclusions from this study. And I'll preface this here, but by saying the report makes a lot of specific recommendations. We probably won't get to all of those. And I'm going to link to the study in the show notes for this episode. Before you guys get going, let me tell you what jumped out to me first, and I'd love your thoughts on it. It does connect to what we're talking about right now with Matt. Here's just 2 quotes from your conclusion that kind of, to me, paired together. One is, perhaps that the biggest takeaway from this study is that the rate at which young people in foster care in Illinois graduate from college has not really changed much over the decade. And that is despite significant state and federal investments in I'm paraphrasing here, in helping to not have that happen, to have a higher degree of participation. And then the other quote, few of the students we interviewed seem to benefit from the supports available to young people in foster care to help them succeed in high school or pursue post-secondary education. So you have new supports to make college more accessible. You have data showing no increased pursuit of college, and young people reporting they have not benefited from those new supports. That just seems like such a dismaying reality, where we've improved the odds of getting to college campus, but then either young people are not finding out about those supports or they're not being connected to them. That I could feel myself being kind of frustrated just reading it. So I'm sure it hit you guys the same way. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that strikes me about these findings is they just scream out for a need for additional training, both for caseworkers who work in the child welfare system, foster parents, and even people in regular public education, public schools. They all need to know about these various supports that are available to these young people and need to know how to help young people access them. Because that's, without that, you can have a million different types of programs, but if young people don't know how to get to them, they're not going to do any good. And that's, I think, one of the big takeaways from the study.
Judy, you agree? Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with Amy. And I would say a second takeaway for me is sort of the lack of coordination across child welfare and high schools and child welfare and community colleges. I think some of those programs that we said maybe young people weren't benefiting from were at the high school level. They were just their policies, and then they're also sort of mechanisms that are supposed to be in place that young people just were not talking about receiving when we talked with them. And we held follow-up sessions too with the participants, and still they had not heard of the programs that we found online that they should be benefiting from. I just want to say, though, that the college resources are enormously beneficial to this group. I don't want to suggest that they aren't. Young people across the board really did appreciate and do appreciate and want to use those opportunities. I think that they just, in order to use them wisely, there needs to be some more preparation to help them to be successful.
Yeah, I guess what I just started rambling about was mostly in regard to the actually getting there, right? Getting the help you need to get there, getting the people in your life that can talk you through getting there. But there's another component of this, which is that there is a fairly sizable group of foster youth getting to a college campus, a community college, and not finishing. And that's its own other separate problem. So what conclusions or recommendations did you guys come to on that part? Like, for the kids who get there, what are we not doing that people believe, if we were investing in it, could help this fairly large group of kids get to the finish line in community college?
One thing is to identify young people that are having trouble early on, rather than waiting until they, start drowning. That young people need to be identified during their first semester on campus. Make sure they're enrolled in the right classes. If they need tutoring or other kind of academic supports, make sure they're getting it from the start and not waiting until they've, failed the first semester before finding them the help that they need. So I think that's one big important step that could be taken.
I think some of the other things that were mentioned in the report too are, one of the things that young people talked about is community colleges do have a lot of resources, but young people aren't always sure how to access them and how to access them soon enough. And so I think some community colleges kind of do this better than others. So in Illinois, the city of Chicago system, all the young people who attended those colleges really had a good experience. They had people who were looking out for them. There were lots of opportunities to meet and greet. And whatever reason, those schools seem to really put some like safety net and wraparound kind of programs around young people. But I think there's just a lot of variation across colleges. But two of the things that Amy identified that I thought were good ones in the report were the point of contacts, Amy, on college campuses. So You want to talk a little bit about that? Because that's kind of a...
Yeah, sure. So this is something that they've been doing out in California for a while, where they have someone on every community college campus who is like the liaison for young people who had been in foster care. This is the one person you can go to who will know something about the child welfare system, know something about the various financial aid programs that are available to you. So just having someone on every community college campus who's that dedicated person can really make a difference.
Matt, how does that kind of resound with you? I mean, is there a person at your community college that you feel like kind of just has your back? Is there to kind of help you get through, or are you doing that pretty much on your own in your mind?
So there's not really that type of person. The receptionist at the local chapter in Havana is the one that is the most understanding. So she understands what everybody is and how they are able to deal with certain things. She's helped me a lot with my schedule, even though she's not supposed to. My advisor messed my schedule up at one point with my science classes. So I had to speak to somebody else, a different advisor about that. And she's the one that put me in contact with them.
Gotcha. Where are you going to go from here? Are you going to go the science route now? Or are you still thinking about baking? Baking and science, that probably kind of go hand in hand. There's some science in that, right?
Yeah, they do cross. But I plan on transferring to the University of Illinois in Springfield to pursue a bachelor's in psychology.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I want to give you the last word here on like the conclusions about what we've discussed in terms of these guys' research. So based on your own experience and that of, your peers in foster care that what do you think the child welfare or education systems could be doing better to support the college aspirations of youth while they're in foster care? I guess it's just a less wordy way of saying that is that what do you wish somebody had done for you in this realm that didn't happen?
Provide me with more information, like the DCFS caseworkers themselves need more training and information to pass on to the youth. And then for like the colleges, they just need to, the college that I go to, they knew before I even walked in the door that I was with DCFS. DCFS had reached out to them and they told them that I was coming, and they have been good with me. So I think that DCFS should reach out on behalf of the youth, and then that the college should make sure that the classes that they get put into are understanding. I know that they have like IEPs, some of them do, when they go to college, and that does help them. But like the colleges provide free tutoring for a certain amount of time along with therapy sessions. Like you get 5 free therapy sessions. If they just provide that, I think everything will go smoothly.
Pretty solid advice. And there's more advice in the report, which again, we will put in the show notes for this episode. So Amy Dworsky of Chapin Hall, Judy Havlicek of the University of Illinois, and Matt Schaad, future baker, psychologist, or scientist, or all three. Thank you guys for joining us on the Imprint Weekly Podcast.
Thank you.
All right, we're joined today by Lino, Peña-Martinez, and Christopher Scott, the president and CEO, respectively, of Sun Scholars, a new organization that aims to support students who have experienced foster care or who have been adopted on college campuses in Connecticut. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining the Imprint Weekly Podcast.
Absolutely.
We'll start with you, Chris. Chris, where are you? Where do you live?
Yeah, so I've been born and raised in Connecticut. I currently live in Manchester. Formerly grew up in Plainville, Southington, New Britain area. And Sun Scholars Inc. is formerly located in West Hartford, Connecticut, although we serve students statewide.
Okay, good stuff. I actually grew up in Wethersfield, so
just
not too far from, I think, your original office, right? Over near Trinity College.
You're very close.
Yeah.
So you're very, very close to us. So yeah, Wethersfield's a great town. It's one of the quaint small ones in Connecticut. Similar to Plainville, so I definitely know the vibe.
Absolutely. And Lino, where are you now?
So I live out of DC. I actually moved here roughly about a year ago. I'm originally from California. I moved out here from Boston, actually.
Good stuff. So you know, a lot of times on this podcast, we get into some pretty weighty issues. So I try to start off light and make every guest go through this. So I'll put you guys through this too. Just give me 2 of these: your favorite movie or TV show, book, musician, or sports team. You just have to give me 2.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot.
I'm giving myself time to think.
I guess so. All right. So I'm definitely on the Save Daredevil bandwagon. So I'm I will give some clout to Daredevil for what it's worth. So I'll put that as my favorite TV show currently. Also, Avatar: The Last Airbender is really where I'm at in life. I binge watch it over and over again.
That's so really to be.
My fiance and I just have Korra and Avatar on repeat nonstop. That's all we watch.
I get so many good recommendations out of this that just like I got to get out of my own comfort zone, especially now that we're just living inside for a while. So
Avatar, definitely.
Yeah.
And then as far as favorite book goes, I am a huge fan of this book called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And it is a story of this, it's actually a true story of this individual who had a stroke. And he was paralyzed. The whole body comes through from his coma. And he only can blink with his left eye. And he writes this book from this vegetable state. And he was formerly a very prestigious editor of a French magazine. And he actually writes the book by blinking to the corresponding letters of the alphabet. And they had a translator that would go in and, so 3 letters for C and so on. They redid the alphabet to make sure like more frequent letters were up front and more blinks for like less frequently used letters. And it's about 120 pages. And it's really just a memoir. It's about his life. It's about his living statement. But I think the means of his creation of the book is just so beyond inspiring. So it's a big motivator. It's like, no matter what mountains we got in front of us, we can climb them. So it inspires me.
That's insane. All right, Lino, your turn. You got enough time.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to TV, I actually, for the last couple of years, I did not own a TV. I mostly Netflix. I mean, that's
sure.
Everybody nowadays, right? But I probably say for me, Game of Thrones. I really am a big fan of Game of Thrones. I think it just has everything. It has just the characters, the storyline, it's kind of like, it really transports you. And I really love that about it. It's really well done overall. I mean, I didn't like the ending, but it's almost assumed. That's coming. I've seen pictures where it's just like this beautifully drawn horse, and then at the very end, they just like the last phase is just like a stick figure, the head of the horse, and that's how that ending felt. But book-wise, I'd actually say A Paradise Built in Hell by Rebecca Solnit. It's about the social utopias that arise in states of chaos. And so she basically looks back at all these major catastrophes, 9/11 and a couple of other different catastrophes, and what happened and what were the social utopias. And, because media and everything usually portrays this notion of like people resort to looting and all kinds of, all that kind of image that you get, right? And in this book, she really makes a different case that people come together, these beautiful soup kitchens opened up, and people banded together and create these beautiful social utopias.
Brad. So this is the first time that we are all talking, but I definitely knew your guys' names because every year I go deep on the policy recommendations of the Foster Youth Internship Program, which is run by the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. Sadly, for obvious reasons, I couldn't really do it in the normal form this year, but every year that really pairs some young people with lived experience with people on Capitol Hill to work. And I personally think it's one of the most important things that comes out every year because it really speaks to, it's the one kind of injection of lived experience tied to policy that a lot of those guys are going to see every year. And so we made the decision kind of early on as we started for what was first the Chronicle, Social Change, and now is the Imprint. We're going to go deep on this every year, and it merits that. And so I remembered you guys from that. So was that where you guys met?
It was.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And talk to listeners a little bit about that experience. I mean, what did that do I know what it does for the field. What did it do for you guys?
I'm happy to go first if you like, Lino. I mean, it really just changed my life through and through. I mean, on the professional end of it, being able to be at the Hill, being able to be in that environment, being able to like feel that level of competition, there is credibility that comes with it too. Going back to Connecticut, having been through this really opened up a lot of doors with joining the Family First Governance Committee, joining these policy working groups here in Connecticut. None of that would have been possible had it not been for the experiences down in DC, had it not been for working, interning for Senator Amy Klobuchar at my end, being able to do that final publication. Really, it also gives you skills that I just simply hadn't crafted yet, being the development of policy. On the other end of it, it changed my life to be around other people with the similar experiences at the caliber that we were at. I mean, Lino and I mean, we have matching tattoos. Like us and Raya, we became really close in our cohort because, we were living together, we were working together, and we were able to really just bring our walls down and be human, because it's like so many places in our life, people say, oh, well, X, Y, and Z on the negative attributes that are typically associated with a foster youth. Whereas here we were able to just be open. We can laugh at things. My mismatched socks that Lino would joke around about, or the dark humor we would have, because it's just like, we can watch, sitting down, watching a movie like Instant Family, and we can crack up at parts that other people are just like, oh my gosh, are you insane? And we can do that because we get it and we've lived it. And that level of connection and empathy was really reassuring and empowering. It just felt like we were part of something, and we can, at least in mine, I felt like there's a sense of belonging that I really I needed, and CCI definitely brought that. So that's my answer.
Yeah, Lino, you, I should commend you and Raya and several others from the FYI alumni group have kind of taken on this Foster Strong podcast, which is much better than ours. Much better sound and production for sure. I kind of got a download from Carrie Richmond about exactly what goes into producing, and I was like, oh my God, that's way more complicated than anything we're doing. But it's really, I mean, what you just described, Chris, really comes through in that podcast. So it was a really amazing first season that you guys put together.
So I mean, you're crossing the wires there, and that's funny because what happens is this foster youth internship program, it brings all these people together in some way, shape, or form, and it creates this social capital that is, unrivaled, because this chosen family then decides to take on all these new ventures, and that's where they're crossing the wires. Because actually, me and Chris, I'm involved in Foster Strong separately, and me and Chris are also involved. And Raya is actually also involved in both Foster Strong and Sun Scholars as well. And so there's a little bit of overlap there. And I know Carrie did the program a couple of years back, but honestly, the Congressional Coalition on Adoption is doing this program, to me, I would say it really aligns with something that, we at Sun Scholars believe, and I think many people within the child welfare community, is that the value in social capital. We really, really stand behind the notion that it is relationships that got us to this point today and that are going to take us there tomorrow. And so, it's that whole quote that the only way I've been able to see this far is on standing on the shoulders of giants. And so this opportunity to be amidst the change makers, the advocates, to the people who are writing the legislation, and to be rubbing elbows, and to be, right, it's really easy to kind of be our genuine selves, to show up amidst all the triumph that we have kind of accomplished, and to really leave an impression and to have lasting relationships. And so just getting that foot in the door really opened up so many other doors, and just kind of opened up our hearts to create all these wonderful adventures to change the system, to have lasting impact, to affect the people who are coming behind us.
Yeah. And so, just to kind of, we can transition into the Sun Scholars program with this, but, and Chris, when you wrote your FYI policy proposal, your argument was there's a lot of youth who are aging out of foster care and need help. There's also ones who have experienced it but didn't exit from it. They were adopted, they went into guardianship, and there shouldn't be anything magical about just that group that's aging out. They all should be kind of equitably have access to the federal supports. And just kind of studying up on Sun Scholars before we talked, it kind of carried over, right? I mean, the description you guys have is that it's experienced foster care, adoption, transfers of guardianship. So that policy really kind of, you really did go from that to kind of starting a nonprofit around your idea. That's very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you're right on picking that up. It's very, very, very intentional. The reality is childhood adversity. There's no silver bullet that just qualms the problems that arise from the adverse childhood experiences that almost definitely anyone in that has experienced foster care will have endured. And so, adoption is not the magic bullet. It definitely helps in many cases, but in others, there's traumas, there's adversities. And so for us at Sun, we look at it, and when I was developing this, it really, was in part born from CCI. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for CCI. Lino and I wouldn't have met. But on the ground, we were very, very intentional, especially when we were developing our contract, to include individuals who had disrupted, reunified back with their parents, but were still in care. We include extended youth who are or aged out, adopted, kinship. It's something that's really important to me because, those students are definitely in need. And so we definitely, that energy from the policy carried right over the sun, which is really exciting.
So let's talk about what exactly this program is going to do. And I think that one way that might be helpful is take a hypothetical young person who has graduated from high school in Connecticut, gets on a campus where Sun Scholars is present. Explain to listeners, as a participant in Sun Scholars, what will be available to them and how that will be delivered. So just take one person and kind of walk people through that.
Sure. So let's say we'll use an example of we'll just call someone named Josh, right? Or Josh, we'll go with Josh. Josh shows up to the campus. He reaches out to Sun Scholars. So we're statewide in the sense that we aren't exclusive to any one university. We will support a student regardless. And that's very intentional because that gets rid of this conflict of interest of having to recruit students to one college over the other. So what we'll say to Josh is, it's our priority to make sure you find the best fit for yourself. We're okay wherever you go. So find a place of study. What we're going to be doing then at that point is we'll support them with academic coaching. We'll make sure that they're finding an off-campus apartment if they're looking for housing right now, especially in COVID. Let's pretend this is happening in COVID. More likely than not, the dorms are shut down. When the dorms shut down, we helped all of our on-campus students find housing. In Josh's case, we're going to go to apartments for him. We're going to help out negotiate with a landlord, making sure that he's not getting ripped off, making sure that the Department of Children and Families is able to help take care of the rent because they are eligible for a rent subsidy. We're going to make sure that if there's any glitches in the system, we can help out with that financially. So we have emergency relief funds. If Josh can't get his textbooks right away, we'll cover his textbooks and he can reimburse us. If Josh misses a phone payment because he's been unemployed, literally yesterday we did this with a student, we'll help cover their phone bill because, you can't get a job, you can't find new employment if you don't have a phone. I mean, you can't, it's very challenging. More than that, well, that's like the technical work and that can go on forever. More than anything, we really believe in community, we really believe in social capital, and we will fight for each other. So myself included, all of my staff are all alumni or have had an experience in child welfare. And that's not to be necessarily calling ourselves, hey, welcome, we all have this experience in foster care. But what it does allow is it opens up for empathy. It opens itself up for understanding, for relationship building. Very much what Lino and I felt in CCAI. We really want to be able to replicate that sense of belonging. And for Josh, being able to have Josh feel like he's part of a community, have an office they can come to, we'll cover his Uber if he doesn't, being able to hang out with other students, being able to, tell me what his favorite anime is so I can go watch it and know that I'm actually going to watch it so we can talk about it later. That sense of community, that sense of belonging is so empowering because it's that sense that I have people in my corner that sometimes is the difference between I'm going to graduate and I'm not. I'm going to go to my classes and I'm not. There's a sense of, there's a safety net as well if he does fall. And that's where we're there to meet. So we really, really thrive in that sense of community belonging. And from that, we have mentoring. So we meet with our students every week, every 2 weeks, touching base, seeing like, hey, what's going on? What's up? How are you doing? We also are conscious that we won't treat Josh like a client. We won't say, all right, you have 1 hour to meet with us on Tuesday from 1 to 2 o'clock, and then you're out the door. It's like, swing by the office. Let's talk. If you want to hang out afterwards, let's get some coffee. Let's go. Other students are coming by. As long as nothing personal needs to be shared, let's all hang out and chat. Let's have a conversation. Let's be human with each other. And that has opened up such a sense of empowerment, of security that a lot of our students are missing, honestly. I know I was when I was in college. It feels like you're a lone wolf at times, and we want to build that pack to continue that metaphor forward. I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that.
I mean, the part that I like to add is, one, to all of the stuff they're saying is we really follow this cheer on, do with, do for. So before we do something with somebody, we cheer them on to do that. So we're kind of empowering and enabling people to do things for themselves. And so we're kind of following that model. Likewise, we also, because we are an alumni-driven organization and we want to stay that way, we offer things like fellowships that allow those students to, come in, be introduced to this community, and then to become part of the community in a way that you now are doing the same thing, doing that peer mentorship, and then you can kind of, so there's like it's almost like a pathway into the community where you can kind of become more and more of a leader within the community, and you can start, delivering trainings. You can start supporting and mentoring people yourself as well. So there is a component of a peer mentoring model within our organization.
And just to build off that real quick, Josh or any prospective student, we look at our students not as clients, not as cases. This prospective individual is treated as a future colleague. And we walk the walk on that. I mean, Maya and Whitney, who are my full-time staffers, they were my former students, and then they became mentors. And then now here they are as full-time staff. And so that's the way we treat our students. As we're not just looking at you as like, all right, you're a freshman, we want you to be a sophomore. It's like, no, we want you to be our future colleague. We want you to be the next social worker, the next commissioner, the next policy analyst in Senator Blumenthal's office. We want these people to be who we get to work alongside with, not in 10 years, but in 2 or 3 years. And so that's really what I think makes Sun especially unique, is we really are social capital brokers in a sense.
Are you a professional in the field of child welfare, juvenile justice, or other family and youth services? Subscribe today to Youth Services Insider, the Imprint's exclusive section on all the insider news you need to stay in the know. Funding opportunities, major federal and state policy shifts, interviews with key leaders in the field. It's all available only for our Youth Services Insider subscribers. Sign up for a monthly or yearly subscription today by visiting imprintnews.org/subscribe. Our podcast listeners get 10% off their subscription by entering the promo code podcast10. That's imprintnews.org/subscribe and get 10% off your subscription by entering the promo code podcast10 today.
It's interesting what you said about a centralized program versus a campus-based program, because I can see the pros of that when you kind of laid it out. The con is obviously, even Connecticut, which is not the hugest state in the world, if you're at Yale or you're at Wesleyan, that's kind of far to go into an office to check in and stuff. I mean, do you envision that being a challenge, or are you going to them? Like, how do you plan to have that?
Great question. Definitely something we've thought through. In our first couple years, our contract that we were awarded from the state of Connecticut, it breaks it down that our total caseload is 60 students. So there's a sense that, we're being conscious of not overwhelming ourselves and making sure that whoever's in front of us, we can give the justice they deserve in sense of time. We also can serve as many of other students as we need to on one-off cases. We contract, our rent is with one of those shared office buildings, kind of like a WeWorks, but it's called Spaces. And we did that very intentionally because they have buildings all throughout Connecticut. So they have some in New Haven, up by UConn, in the center of the state. And while we have our own private office in the West Hartford, which is very central in the sense that most of our students, whether you're in Manchester, which is half an hour away, or UConn, which is half an hour away, or if we go a little bit the other direction, the central, everything's within 15 minutes, 30 minutes. For those youth that are down in Bridgeport, New Haven, we can go to the shared spaces in those places, an unintentional rhyme, and use their lobby to meet with the students. So we do have a budget for our staff to have travel reimbursement. So if a student needs to meet in Bridgeport, our goal is, one, we can meet in the shared space building, or we can find another community location for them. We want to go somewhere that's comfortable for them. What's your favorite pizza shop? And we'll cover pizza. Or what's your favorite coffee shop? These are questions we would ask them to make sure they feel comfortable and be able to spread ourselves out. Our coordinators are geographically based. So, Whitney and Maya serve students per region of the state. And then as we expand, as we grow, we by next year, we are going to incorporate one more full-time person. And in 3 years, we have a bit of planning to do that is already incorporated, that we will be expanding our full staffing that will allow us to continue to broaden our reach, broaden the scope of what we do. And with the intention of, eventually we'll have someone specifically designated just like in person in New Haven. But for now, we're all located central and we travel out.
Yeah, and this is if there's ever a time to experiment with just having people's homes be the regional offices, that's kind of makes sense right now. So there is that. Did you guys look into and kind of study, I know there's some states that have kind of a more robust network of support programs. I'm thinking of Guardian Scholars, right? In California, there's a lot of campuses that do that, Texas. Did you kind of study what they did? How did you kind of build your mousetrap?
I actually went through the Guardian Scholars program out in California.
Oh, okay. So, what college, Lino? I should have asked you
that. UC Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara. Okay.
Beautiful campus. I mean, it was one of the best places I had gotten into, and I was just like, I had never been there, and then I selected it blindly, and it was probably one of the best decisions of my life.
I mean, so, Chris, I know you went to Central Connecticut, not quite as glamorous, right down the street from where I grew up. It's not quite the beauty of Santa Barbara, but still nice.
So nice.
Yeah, so the Guardian Scholars Program, that's actually was part of also my involvement in this as well. Is I had the understanding, I felt what it was like to go through one of these programs, and I also did look what was already there. And so we're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. And so certain things have been modeled on those existing programs, and we have built upon and developed from there.
Yeah, for instance, we I guess to speak on that with another layer as well is I did my undergraduate capstone on post-secondary ed outcomes, and that led to receiving a grant where I co-founded the Care Scholars program at Central, where I basically did a micro version of SUN. I worked specifically on recruitment and academic engagement of individuals who grew up in adoption or foster care, and that's really where I was able to build the experience of, the program development side, the mentoring side, being able to work with students. And very quickly, I expanded what I was doing way beyond the expectations of just academic coaching and career. We were helping students break leases if they had a slumlord for their apartment. We were helping students navigate DCF. I became really entrenched in DCF policy in Connecticut because of being on the state advisory council. And one thing led to another, where we went to CCAI. And for a while, I realized my loyalty is not to one student or not to one college, but to the students specifically. So to me, I wanted to really expand and create the statewide model and say, we should really support students regardless of where they're going to college. Central is a wonderful school. I'm an alumni. I love it. I wanted to be able to say, all right, what about the student that lives in New Haven that wants to attend Southern? Or what about the student that is going to UConn and they're really proud of getting admitted there? How do we support those youth and whatnot? And also, how do we support those who don't go to college, that want to just take a career path or a community college? As a community college alum myself. And so that's really where we developed SUN programmatically, was instead of being one spoke of the wheel, we want to become the whole wheel, where the advocacy, the mentors, the policy, the advocates, and programmatically the experiences from capstone to developing care to being in the policy world led to ability to create SUN. With that, basically, in a one-sentence summary, SUN is kind of like the merger of the best practices of higher education and the best practices of child welfare, and bringing them together into one place. And that was something that hadn't existed in Connecticut yet.
You might be the first centralized college support for former foster youth program. I'm just trying to think. I don't off the top of my head know of anybody or any state that's got that. Guardian Scholars is campus by campus. They kind of are tied, right? They talk, but it's sort of loose affiliation. This is the first one I've known.
It's kind of like anybody who knows anything about child welfare has heard about the proverbial 2 to 3% that graduate foster youth, that will go on to graduate from a four-year university by a certain age. And it's kind of like specifically what we're doing is we're addressing that in the most simple sense. We're addressing exactly that.
Yeah. So before you walked us through, that was really good with the hypothetical Josh, how the person might experience a service. You're limited to 60 early on, which is a smart deal. I'm sure you'll grow that number. How do you recruit? I mean, how do people find out that SUN Scholars is something that they're eligible for?
Great question. And so we actually are very privileged in this sense, in that we don't need to do recruitment. And one of the reasons for that is it keeps us being able to focus on the services. Recruitment is a massive energy exertion. Going out to the colleges, finding students, being at high schools, going to conferences, it would eat up a lot of time, especially in the fall and the spring. And so what we negotiated with our contract, and actually what DCF suggested, because originally we're going to do recruitment. Instead, we accept referrals in two ways. So if a student comes to us, so this happened yesterday, we had a brand new student, never met them before. They were actually referred to me by two separate people, but a student came to me, and so they wanted to be part of SUN. They were struggling with some stuff. Incredible individual. And we were able to enroll them immediately. If a student comes to us directly, they can refer themselves as long as we're within capacity, which is right now. We're not at that 60 yet since we just began formally a couple of days ago. So we're not at that 60. We can accept a student. The other way that we can accept a student is specifically from our contract liaisons at DCF, the Department of Children and Families. So those are the Wendy Jackson, Maria Pastorelli, Lisa Driscoll. They're in charge statewide of all post-secondary educational ventures of college students. So they could refer to us students, which also helps us, what are the students that are the most in need? What are the students that are really struggling? Who's going to follow through? And that's who we also will reach out to. And that's how we get our students, essentially, is referrals from those three individuals. If a social worker reaches out to us, we're just going to refer them to Maria and Wendy, who will then refer their students to us. Additionally, sometimes there's one-off instances, like the state commissioner, Vanessa Durantes, she referred us to a student. So absolutely, I'm going to work with that student. The commissioner, she kind of is higher up on the chain. So I'll accept her referral without a doubt. Beyond that, that's the actual cohort, right? That's like, we're meeting weekly, we're bi-weekly, we're helping you out with jobs, all that. We also will serve students on a one-off basis, and that can be by referral, that by anyone, and they can reach out to us. So a student that becomes homeless because of COVID, we had a bunch of these students that came to us. And all of those cases, we would go reach out, help them find an apartment, meet with landlords, and then our doors are always open. If they want to come hang out at the office, we're not going to turn them away. But they're not part of like the normal cohort, and they also choose not to be. They're like, what, I'm good. I have like a 3.5. I'm working. I like my stuff. I'm good in life, but I really need help getting a new apartment. We can help them on those one-off situations. And if they need another one-off situation, they can come back to us and we'll help them. So short and sweet, referrals from DCF or students coming to us, but also we can one-off serve students at any capacity. There's no limit to that. We just assess and review how many of those are taking place every quarter. And then we can report and adjust hours and funding as needed to further accommodate new students that are part of our 30 to 60 cohort.
Just to reiterate, we're community. We're a community with the letters 501c3 at the end. And there's no barring to the connections, to the social capital that we believe in, to the chosen family that we can kind of create into propping people up and acting as social liaisons, social brokers, and connecting people and referring them to existing resources. And so in that sense, the community, the prospects of the community building is endless.
Lino, do you remember how you came to find Guardian Scholars? Did they recruit you, or how'd you find out?
Guardian Scholars, I had heard about it because my sister participated in it at her college. So she went to UC Davis, and they had a little satellite. And so she was like, oh yeah, you should check this out. And so it was my own thing, but there was an automatic enrollment through the financial aid office. And so in the Guardian Scholars program, and because at our university, and ultimately this is part of my goal as well, and some of our goals is at UCSB, the Guardian Scholars program, one of the reasons why you were automatically enrolled is because you automatically were given priority registration, something as simple as that. And it just kind of gives you, because as a person in need, if you can't get the classes that you need, and that creates an additional stress on top of this social stress that you have already coming from the child welfare community. Ultimately, that's what we're going to be trying to advocate for when we come to universities, things like that, is to try and represent the voice of these students and how we can best support them, to give them services that can help them excel. Because honestly, Guardian Scholars program, definitely, it landed me my first internship in college. It was a great community that I was a part of. And honestly, the priority registration was literally the best thing that Guardian Scholars did for me throughout my college experience.
Yeah. Just to build off that real quick, it's we really treat our work as in the nature of capacity building and systematic reform. So if a student comes to us, really good example of this. There was a huge issue with textbooks at CCSU in the sense that when all of our students that were going there, textbooks were being held up. They were having students call their social workers in front of a giant line of students. And it's like, that's embarrassing, right? Having to call your social worker, like, hey, I'm in DCF. Why aren't my paychecks in the office yet? So what we did was, on all those situations, one-off for those 5 or 6 students, we helped them, right? We made sure we troubleshot with their DCF worker, with the bookstore. But then we took it a step further. we met with the bookstore managers and we're able to create a new system at that bookstore so that stuff never happens again. Communication lines between DCF, between the bursars. So now whenever a student is receiving financial aid from the Department of Children and Families at the bursars, internally they share that with the bookstore, so the bookstore has a compiled list and so on. So this way no student has to call their social worker in the middle of the bookstore where it's 50 other college students behind them. Whenever we see a problem that's a systematic problem, we look to say, all right, let's solve it with the student, right? That's the Band-Aid. That's the symptom. Let's cure the symptom. But then let's take it a step further. What's the root? Just like, so in some of the colleges that we're going to be working with, absolutely, we want to fight for things such as early enrollment for our students or any students, that not just in Sun, but any student that has that background, because as Lino shared, those systematic reforms give our community such a better fighting chance at college graduation. With all the adversity stacked up, if we can chip away at it a little bit each year, eventually the mountain becomes that much easier to climb.
So Chris, what was the deal in Connecticut during coronavirus with the college dorms? Were most of them not willing to let, current and former FOSSs stay on campus?
Yeah, it was a really crazy experience. So most colleges, with the exception of UConn, who handled this really well, shut down almost overnight. I think CCSU gave their students a 4-hour notice. They thought there was someone on campus with COVID. They said 4 hours, everybody has to move out. They had limited emergency housing at a hotel. Not everybody got it. There was no priority for one student or the other. Just whoever applied, first kind of got it. And that was really scary because, from my own experiences, college was like my first home. I was couch surfing when I was at community college. I slept on kitchen floors. I slept in cars. I would jog to school because I didn't have a car yet until I did, and it became a little mini home for me. Getting into CCSU as a student, as a college student, way back in the day. I guess now it's been a few years, but when I was a student there, I remember walking to my dorm like, wow, I finally have a bed. This is like a home for me. I would study abroad on the breaks, so I would have somewhere to go. I would stay on campus. I'd find productive ways to not have to be homeless, basically. Winter break, I'd be on campus. Summer, I'd be in Peru. Spring break, I'd be in Cuba. I found ways to make the best of my situation. And COVID took that away from so many students that were trying that strategy. Overnight, summer study abroads were gone. Summer breaks, now we're this terrifying moment. Like, where do I live? So for our students, the colleges wouldn't let them back on. And it was really, really intimidating. We were thankful that we had a donor network of people, social workers, higher ed professionals, just people that are good-hearted, background checked, right? No creepy people, had the option of finding a place to live. DCF was great with the extended care youth. They covered hotels. They helped. We worked with them on the ground to make sure that they were able to get apartments immediately. For other students that did not receive DCF benefits, so those who are in transfer of guardianships or kinship adoptions don't receive any benefits. Those are the youth we worked with to help get into donor apartments. But again, this was a symptom. There's the 15 to 30 students in front of me, but systematically, there's hundreds of students out there that are struggling from this. And COVID's really thrown just a massive curveball into the state. Connecticut's doing a bit better in some regards. We have a moratorium on, so no one's aging out, even if they should have. No one's losing their funding. But for those who were housing insecure and were kinship adoptions, that maybe those adoptions dissolved, they're not functioning anymore, they don't have the support system, those students are struggling through this. They've still been, it's been a constant motion with our kinship youth to problem solve and make sure they have a safe place to stay. Because how do you study if you don't know where you're sleeping? Or how do you study when you're sleeping at a party house? It just doesn't work. So solving those problems are where we are today.
So, 5 to 10 year plan here for Sun Scholars. What's your ambition for this? Where do you want to be? Do you see this going past the Connecticut borders? Is that your hope? Or do you kind of want to focus on just building this as a state program, or what?
Yeah, I'll go first and Lino can take over. I think that we do have high aspirations, but the way we look at it is, to me, the most important thing is what's in front of me right now. And that's, we have this incredible privilege of being a former FOSS youth, having a staff of alumni, receiving a contract that allows us to, a couple $100,000 a year that we can really serve our students. That's my top priority right now. It's let me serve who's in front of me right now to my best of my ability. And those numbers, I believe, will open up doors for us to expand outward in the future. So to me, my short term is right in front of me. It's like, here's a student that is displaced for COVID, let me get them a house or an apartment. Here's a student that's failing, let me get their classes. Here's a student that needs a job because they're unemployed, let's find them a job. Those are all the things that are my short-term goals that are, when a student's in front of me, they're the most important thing in the world. I only, and I'll say this before I share aspirations, I will only ever define the success of some scholars or my personal success by the success of my students. That is my top priority. I will only ever say how well we're doing based on how our students are doing. They're our future colleagues. They're the reason why I have a contract. They're the reason why I get to exist. And it's a privilege to do what I do. I love it, but they're the reason for it. And they got to be the priority. In the future, I would love to expand more in Connecticut. I would love to be able to be honest, I would love to help broker colleges to create their own mini version of us. We don't need our name on something, right? As long as students are being helped, that's my priority. I would love other universities to pick up, to have an in-house, graduate assistant, graduate fellow, whatever the title is, that can be a point of contact, at the state colleges, even the private colleges in Connecticut. In the future, I would love to go to other states. I would love to go to expand to different areas. I can see Yamaya or Whitney, my staff now, being directors in another state in 5 years if they chose that path. But right now, my top priority is who are the students in front of us and how do we help the colleges here in Connecticut reform. And if we can do that, we can do anything. So, because as a Connecticut native yourself, I'm sure you're aware of how stringent and rigid the college system is here. It's very siloed. And so if we can even, at least in the realm of child welfare, where I think everyone can get around the table and agree on what needs to be done, if we can help break some of the rigidity and support our students, and including supporting those who will never meet through policy revisions, through structural changes, that's what my goal is right now in the state. We're so unique right now in the sense that, and I've said this already, but having that alumni experience, being representative driven, 100% of our staff are former youth. At least 50% of our board are. And we do that intentionally. And, I'll share this. For the past year prior to getting this contract, I worked almost exclusively for free to develop this organization. And DCF saw the work that we were doing. They saw the results. And our commissioner, Vanessa Durantes, and Deputy Commissioner Michael Williams, they put their money on us. They said, okay, what you're doing, we believe in this. We're going to take a chance on this. It hasn't been done, right? There's no organization. I think it's okay to say this. I don't think there's another organization that is entirely youth-led at the capacity that we are. Professionals with our degrees, we're serving the community. And they put our money on us. And I want to, my aspiration, if nothing else comes from this, I would love to show the country, other organizations, that representation truly matters. And they can put our money on our youth. That the future commissioners of DCF can be allies, which is so important. They can also be youth. That lived experience provides expertise. And to us, can we prove that lived experience truly provides the expertise or adds to the expertise to serve our community, to build empathy, to break down these walls, to lift each other up? And I believe it does. I wholeheartedly believe it does. And I know it does. I've seen it happen. I've been doing this for years now, and I've seen my students get lifted, and it's the most rewarding thing. And that's what I would like to prove as a point to others, as an unquestionable point, that if we lift the voices in the lives of our youth, that in the system alongside allies, we never want to, take away allies. They're incredible. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Kate at CCAI, but we want to make sure if we lift up those youth voices, true systemic change can be a product of that.
Chris Scott and Lino Peña-Martinez, the group is Sun Scholars. Guys, thanks for joining the Imprint Weekly Podcast.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us today for this Summer Rewind edition of the Imprint Weekly Podcast. The Imprint Weekly Podcast is a production of the Safe Camp Audio Network, which is a division of Fostering Media Connections. Please visit safecampaudio.org on the web or at Safe Camp Audio on all major social media. This podcast is produced and mixed by Christine Anchoco, with music by Luke Giroux and Cyrus Elia. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you consider subscribing or giving us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. And we would greatly appreciate if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast and in print Small donations from our listeners and readers go a long way towards helping us grow and cover more great stories in child welfare and youth justice. To support us, it is very easy. Just visit imprintnews.org/donate. You can follow The Imprint on Twitter and Facebook by searching the handle @TheImprintNews and visit us on the web at imprintnews.org. You can email us at tips@imprintnews.org. I'm John Kelly, and we'll see you next week.